It's Denise Fort, who is our moderator for the evening. Denise is the interim CEO of the Education Trust, which is an organization that advocates for the high achievement of all students, and particularly those of color or living in poverty. Denise has more than 2 decades of experience working in the federal legislative and executive branches on education and family policy. So Denise, I am going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And folks, really glad that you're joining us this evening. And my dog, Chester, at the right time. To learn more about our amazing schools in Ward 6. As of a month or 2 ago, I was a Ward 6 resident, but I'm still very fortunate that both of my children attend schools at Ward 6. My middle schooler is at Stuart Hobson, so thrilled to have Principal Frazier here with us, but super excited to be meeting and introducing you to our amazing principals. Let me just say one more thing from my perch. I lead a advocacy organization here based in Washington. And our mission is really all about how do we embrace students' excellence. Every student in DC, every student in Ward 6 walks into our school system ready to learn. But in many instances, the system's not built for that. But I'm proud to say, and I'm happy to be able to share this with you all, the schools in Ward 6, the adults in our Ward 6 middle schools are ready to embrace all the excellence that our kiddos show up with. And so again, super excited to be here with you today. Please use the chat function. That is one thing that I have found really adds energy to these online conversations. And we will try to get through. Suzanne and Sandra are monitoring the chat. We will try to get through as many of those questions as we can. And as Suzanne also mentioned, we do have some poll items. Let me first, because I think it's really important that we get to the questions, but I'd love to introduce our principals. I'm going to start with Principal Aduchim, who is the principal at Capitol Hill Montessori at Logan. 26 years in education, starting out as a science teacher at Harriet Tubman and then at Benjamin Banneker High School. She's also been the principal at J.C. Null and elementary schools before coming to Logan 5 years ago. She was recognized and awarded the DC State Teacher of the Year in 2006 and was a Rubenstein awardee for highly effective leadership. So welcome, Principal Aduchim.
Thank you.
We also have Principal Greg Doman, who is the principal at Jefferson Academy. He's been the principal there for 5 years, working at Jefferson for 10 years. I love to see this upward movement. Starting as a 7th grade math teacher in 2012. My husband's a math teacher, so whoop whoop. Prior to coming to Jefferson, he worked at Friendship Tech Prep in Anacostia from 2010 to 2012. He's super excited about Jefferson's growth and success. He's going to talk more about that. He's also a Southwest DC resident and really looks forward to more growth in the years to come. Next, I'd love to introduce my principal, Principal Eric Frazier at Stuart Hobson Middle School, 21 years in education. He's been a literacy tutor, an English teacher, assistant principal, and now principal. Most of his career was in New York City public schools, but the last 6 years here in DC. He also has 2 young daughters attending DCPS schools. And he says, like the students at Stuart Hobson, one of his favorite parts of the day is still recess. I love that so much. And then certainly last but not least is Principal Magrino, who is our principal at Eliont-Hine Middle School, 22 years in education, both in the district, public charter, private, and alternative school settings with adjudicated youth. And next year will be her 5th year at Eliont-Hine with DCPS. Prior to that, she found a charter school and has also done some consulting across the country. So y'all, among these amazing principals, I think Suzanne pointed out to me, we have 81 incredible years, obviously not sequentially, but collectively. So that's a big deal. And also really love the fact that many of our principals have been certainly in the classroom teaching some really critical science, math, English. This is super amazing. So thank you all for being here. Folks, continue to put your name in the chat, questions in the chat. And now let's get on with the program. So I'm gonna ask, we have some time here, so let's make sure that we get to all of these questions and then also take advantage of questions in the chat. So let's start with Principal Aducham. We're gonna go alphabetically. Principal Aducham, what constitutes to you a successful middle school? And can you give us some examples of the assets of your school at Logan that make it successful?
Thank you. Thanks again for inviting me. This is really exciting because I'll get to hear about my colleagues' schools, stuff that I don't know. So when I think about what constitutes a successful middle school, I think about what brings children joy, right? I think joy has been lost over the years in schools. So I think a successful middle school balances joy as well as rigorous instruction and different opportunities for kids to really expand on what they know and to build and to grow, and to not assume that children come with deficits, but they come fully loaded with lots of gifts. And I think it has to be a balance of, in a middle school, to be for a good place, it has to be a place that's reciprocal, where not only teachers are teaching, but teachers are learning from their students also, so that they can make the necessary adjustments that makes the student feel a part of the school, like they own the school, apart from ensuring that you hire great humans that love little humans, and that they, plan great lessons, engaging lessons, opportunities outside the walls of the school. But first and foremost, a place that's safe and inviting, and a place that's safe for kids to make mistakes and learn from their mistakes before going out to make mistakes where mistakes will be more permanent, but they can learn and grow in a space where they know that they can take not only academic risks, but emotional risks, so that we know that that we really are living up to the mission of teaching the whole child. And I would say some of the assets of being a middle school, we are an educational campus. So some of the assets is that if you stay with us through middle school, an asset is you can go back and visit your upper elementary teacher. You can go back and visit your lower elementary and then your primary teacher. And then if you didn't come up through Montessori, students that coming through the lottery, because we're a school-wide system, we have the opportunity to show students who are just joining us at the 6th grade level what it means to be a Montessori student. And then really being inclusive and making it a safe space for everyone to feel like I didn't just come to this school as a 6th grader, but I think an asset is that we fully embrace every student, no matter which leg of the journey they've decided to come and join us. And I think that's one of the major assets. The second asset is we have a robust parent community, and they will go to the end of the road to ensure that we are continuously improving and providing what they feel that their children need, and they're very supportive of our teachers. So those are just a few things that makes us a pretty robust place to be for kids.
Thank you. Principal Doman.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. As Principal Aducham said, I'm just honored to share the spotlight with my three colleagues here who are all good friends as well. When I think about what makes a great middle school, I think about a place that maximizes a relatively short period with a student and a family, right? 3 years goes by very quickly. Middle school is not a long period of time, but it's also a really challenging and critical time in a young person's life. So I really think about how do you make those 3 years make a lasting, indelible mark on this student's life and their educational trajectory. So in terms of how that plays out and how that plays out at Jefferson, I think it starts with how we engage families. So family engagement's been something that has been a hallmark of the work we do at Jefferson for a decade now. And, you know, from doing introductory home visits, or what we now call advisory introduction meetings, where families build really strong, deep, trusting relationships with multiple members of our staff before their student even hits the doors on their first day of sixth grade, to all sorts of different opportunities for families to engage in really strong, clear communication from the school, from myself down to individual teachers, and families always feeling that really, really close connection to what's happening in our building and in our community. I think about the really strong, positive school culture we built and developed and maintained at Jefferson over the last decade plus. You know, that strong, consistent leadership, the consistent staff and teachers that we've had, and really focusing on a positive, learning focused, safe school culture. Our student satisfaction over the last 8 years has grown from 64% to 97%. Our students love school. Our families love the experience they have at Jefferson. And we really work to make that a lasting impression, something that they'll carry with them for the rest of their lives, even though 3 years of middle school, as I said, goes by like that. And we also obviously want to prepare our students for what comes next. So from the moment they get to us as sixth graders, we're thinking about, where do you want to go to high school, right? Like, we have a great destination high school in Eastern that offers all sorts of different programming, but we want to make sure that we put out all the options in front of our students and families and make sure that we're preparing them over their time at Jefferson for whatever high school opportunity is of most interest to them. So making sure that the courses that we're offering, whether it's accelerated or advanced placement courses, are pushing all of our students. That the enrichment or elective classes that we offer a variety of different options and give students the chance to you know, look into different interests and passions and really try to find themselves, right? Like, middle school is a time where you're sort of developing your identity and who you're going to eventually be as an adolescent and adult. You're reaching for that first bit of independence, and we want to create as many organic opportunities as possible for students to figure out who they are, so that by the time they get to high school, they're off and running in terms of striving for their goals. So to return to my original point, it's about how do we maximize this relatively short period of time with our students, with their families, and set them up for the best possible future as they head into high school and beyond.
Thank you, Principal Doman. I wrote that down as well, maximizing time. That's right on. Principal Frazier, what makes Stuart Hobson a success?
So thank you, everybody, for inviting us tonight. It is, like Principal Doman said, a pleasure to be here with you all, and with three of my esteemed colleagues who I'm here to steal ideas from. So I think just adding on to the great things happening at Capitol Hill Montessori and Jeff, I think for us, like, we really focus on making sure that students are well known to each other and to adults, and that school is a fun place. You know, like everybody said, I think middle school is a time that not everybody looks back on with a positive light. It is a whirlwind. So we are really focused on making sure that it is something that students look back on positively when they look back on their time with us. And we don't want them to feel misunderstood, nor do we want them to feel like they lost anything as a result of being through middle school. So it's an incredibly dynamic time. I think for me personally, like, that makes it a very exciting time to work with young people. Just watching the change that they go through from day to day and week to week and over those 3 years. And I really think that it's our responsibility, in addition to keeping them, you know, engaged and having fun and being well known, to make sure that we open up or keep open pathways to opportunity and choice on the back end of middle school. DC is obviously a school choice system, and there's a lot that can happen in high school afterwards. And I think that middle school is very much about giving students opportunities to explore things that they might delve more deeply into in their high school career. And for us, that's a promise that we try to keep on the back end when we look at where our students matriculate into high school. So every year we send a handful of students to different application schools and selective schools. Some go off to private schools or charter schools. We also have students who go off to schools that focus on things like the arts. So when we continue to see that spread from our students, we are confident that we're delivering on the promise that we make to families in sixth grade, which is that you will have opportunities to explore those things in the 3 years with us. And on the back end, you'll be able to pursue one of those interests, whether it's academic, athletic, artistic, or some combination of those. So I think that, great schools, and I think Stuart's a great school, like the other 3 schools here are places where kids are really well known to each other, to us, and where we open and keep open doors to the pathways that they want to pursue later on.
Principal Fraser, Principal Macrino, Eliont-Hine Middle School.
All right, good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here with a bunch of families and with my colleagues. Can't wait to see you guys in person soon. So what makes a good middle school for me, first and foremost, is that it's a place where students feel safe physically and emotionally, and that they have trusted adults. So it's a place where you're going through a million things in middle school, and I want every child to feel like whatever they're going through, they know that they have somebody to seek out. So that's I think paramount for everything else to happen. Second, I've called it like the cocktail party preparation. Like I want in middle school to expose students to as much as possible, especially things they think they may not be interested in or may not like, or things that they're like, that's not something I do or my friends would do. That's not a middle school thing. So that they're like creating this bank of experiences that they've had. Some of those are going to become things that they want to be passionate about and pursue in high school or beyond. But some of them are just going to be something they tried once that they'll be able to talk about down the road. So I want students to be able to be comfortable speaking about their experiences and proud of things that they've done that are unique, and then also be able to engage with others and hear about their experiences and ask good questions. We definitely use the term joyful learning a lot. So we want, I'm more excited when I walk in a classroom and it's kind of loud and a little bit messy. Usually means that kids are engaged in learning versus a completely silent classroom. So I'm okay with that. We want kids getting their hands dirty and asking a lot of questions and participating with one another. Certainly want to make sure at a middle school that you're preparing students for life. And when I say that, when I think back to middle school, I don't necessarily remember the content of my classes, but I remember revising work and being told to push myself, or working and so experience those things that then push them in life. Certainly having partners with our families, that we're doing this in collaboration with families and students walking away with a strong sense of identity. So I think those are the things that would make a middle school really effective. If students walk away knowing themselves better, they feel safe, they have trusted adults, and they've tried really amazing things. For Eliont-Hine specifically, we're an international baccalaureate school, which is one of the things I think that makes us unique, which emphasizes global preparedness, inquiry-based learning, where students are really investigating the world around them and connecting different subjects. And the approaches to learning are all like life skills, like collaboration and problem solving and communication, that we then explicitly teach and help students get better at. So that's one of the things you get at Eliont-Hine, and that includes like design and arts classes. So every year in my B, you have to have those. So it keeps those as a priority for all of the students. We also have a big part of IB is making sure you have a very active library. We have a beautiful new building with a lot of collaborative learning space and an amazing library. So even if you don't come to Eliont-Hine, come through and see the library. It's really amazing. Lots of sports and activities and a lot of intervention to support students academically. We're a leader in me school. means that we focus on every single student habits for highly effective people, and it focuses on student leadership. So for example, we have students who decided they wanted to have a like a positive vibes only lounge, and they came with a proposal on PowerPoint, the whole 9 yards. It was super cute. So we're giving them a grant to let them set it up and find sponsors and management. So we want to encourage, we're a connect school, which that we collaborate with lots of different partners. We have a community pantry, so we communicate with, or we collaborate with partners for not just Eliont-Hine, but with our feeder schools and with other, you know, community members in the area. And then finally, we just have a really strong focus on social emotional learning. So I'm invested in extra social workers. We have 4 social workers on staff, a partner social worker as a 5th one, and a community support worker from one common unity. And those are just the people we have in the building every day. Then we also have partners beyond that. So we really try to make sure that there's a lot of people to help students navigate middle school. So that's some of what Eliont-Hine brings specifically, and overall what I would say makes a great middle school.
That is such a great description. Thank you so much, Principal Macrino. Sandra, do you want to show the results of the poll that we had at the front end? Wow, it's pretty even. So that's great. How well do you know DCPS middle school landscape? That means all of our Ward 6 parents are doing a lot of their homework. That's great. Looks a little less even on about the academic program, so we're going to get into that a little bit. And this is really great. What are you most interested in hearing about tonight? We're going to dig into all of those questions. So thank you, Sandra, for putting that up. Let me mix it up a little. I think we will go back to Principal Macrino. I am really interested, and I think many parents are here, about your IB program, and I'll ask this of the other principals as well. Since you're an IB school, can you tell us a little bit about how students are identified or placed in these advanced courses? And then maybe even just tease out a little bit for some parents who might not even know what IB is.
Sure. So the middle years program, IB has a primary years program, which is like the little kids, and a middle years program, which goes from 6th grade to 10th grade. And then the diploma program, which is 11th and 12th grade. The diploma program, you take a test, you test into it because if you pass the IB test at the end of that, you can get college credit. The middle years program from 6th grade to 10th grade by design across the world is all inclusive. So everybody in our school is part of the IB program, all the students, including our students with special needs school and 2 instruction all together. IB is International Baccalaureate program. So we have schools that are working toward the same vision that we are all around the world, and teachers get to collaborate. I've been in sessions with people in Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, and all over the place, which is in and of itself pretty neat. But it's basically, the vision is that students are learning by inquiring about the world around them. They're trying to figure out how they can make a small impact in their immediate community, and trying to understand how to be globally minded, like to think about the broader communities beyond them. And so one of the big, like throughout their learning, they do a lot of inquiry-based learning, which involves hands-on projects, field trips, and connecting learning to that. COVID has obviously made things challenging for the last few years, but even with it, we've done our interdisciplinary units where students were studying filmmaking, and then they went to Lincoln Park and we're looking at the Emancipation statue and talking about some of the like the debate around should it stay, should it go? And they interviewed park rangers who it was amazing watching them do this. And so that's just one example. We have a human rights IDU. So we try to really get kids thinking about deep issues that connect all different subject areas, content areas, so they understand the relevance of it. And there are 8 core classes that students take. So obviously they're math, science, social studies, which is called individuals and societies, and math, science, English. And then they have a world language. We have French and Spanish. And then they have to take an art. So that would be either, for us right now, we have visual art and music. They have to take health and PE, and then they have to have a design class, which is really teaching the design process. So giving kids a problem and having them figure out and do prototypes and revise. So that's kind of a idea of what the IB program is. And it culminates in 8th grade with a community project where students identify a community need, come up with a problem, and actually put it into practice. And we had kids do it about police interactions in their communities. We've had students do community events for some of our feeder schools. We had all kinds of things that we've done, gun violence and their experiences with that. They did a podcast. So there's just a lot of really neat activities. So our students are doing that right now. So if you want to know about those, I'd be happy to share, and you can see some of their ERIC talks. ERIC is those are our core values. They do those at the end of the year to present.
That's exciting. Thank you so much for that. Principal Fraser, can you talk about access to advanced courses at Stuart?
Sure. So we obviously not an IB school, but we use the DCPS curriculum. So all of our students are at a baseline. They're in grade level appropriate courses, which align with the DCPS curriculum, which is aligned with Common Core standards for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. In math and English, we have academic pathways to accelerate. So there are honors English classes that we offer to students, which typically honors English and DCPS is typically more of the same grade level content. So it's more of a pacing challenge than it is like a grade level depth of knowledge challenge for students. In math, we have acceleration this year through geometry. Depending on the number of students who are ready for geometry in any given year, we'll have geometry class or a geometry elective or just algebra. My goal personally, and the goal I think for the parents in the math department that we've been talking about that with this year, is to get as many students to and through algebra before they leave with us. Geometry is like icing on that cake, but if we can really get students and large numbers of students to take and thrive with mastery in algebra before they go to high school, that is really what we are trying to focus our energy on when it comes to creating pathways. And I think kind of the other way that we support that is using our math skills and ELA skills or intervention courses to try and accelerate students during the school day. So giving them smaller group additional periods as an elective to get additional practice with math. And we've seen that not just help catch kids up to grade level, but move students from grade level to onto one of those accelerated pathways. Our teachers also offer time in the summer to provide some like equations boot camps and things like that, so that students can get ready for a challenging course they're about to take. And I don't know if are you gonna ask the how do we place question later, Denise?
No, I'm happy for you to take that now.
Okay. So I know like people want to know like how do you get in? So I think I'm really proud of the system that we use. We use a lot of data. We'll find whatever piece of information we can about student performance. So most recent formative assessments that they've taken in class, benchmark assessments that they've taken, and for the layperson that just means how are they doing on tests that teachers are giving? How are they doing on standardized tests like iReady or MAP, or tests that are happening across the district at a given time? What are the teachers recommending? And then lastly, and maybe like most importantly, like what are the student and parent interested in? I think one of the things about middle school, especially in middle school, is like the four of ours that are really busy. This is the first time when students are going to really have to choose between two things that they want to do, and they can only do one of them because of time constraints or scheduling challenges. And I think that there's nothing wrong with mastering Math 6, Math 7, and Math 8 and starting algebra in high school. And we don't want anybody to feel badly about that. So we want to make sure that even if you're ready to jump a little bit into algebra, or to take Math 7 as a 6th grader, that fits into everything else that you're trying to do. Because like we've said before, like this is very much a time about social development. I really think of middle school as like a practicing ground, not a proving ground. So I think we have to be, we have to work together as the school and the family to make sure that we're not just adding every single accelerated opportunity for the sake of doing it and burning kids out at the age of 13 or 14, because that obviously defeats the purpose of school. So we do have those pathways, and we make those decisions largely in collaboration with parents. Like we have let parents override what all the data is suggesting to try a class. And then we try to offer this, and we're clear about the support we can or can't offer to a student. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's how we place and decide.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Principal Doman, what's going on at Jefferson Academy with accelerated coursework?
Absolutely. I'd say we're pretty similar to Stuart Hobson in how they handle accelerated advanced options. So as Principal Fraser said, on the ELA side, right, there are opportunities for students to be placed in accelerated or honors section where students are going through the same grade level curriculum, but at a faster pace, maybe engaging with more rigorous texts or rigorous tasks to continue to push students and challenge them. On the math side, there are even kind of more options in terms of advanced placements. We have 6th graders taking 7th grade math, 7th graders taking 8th grade math, offering up through algebra at a minimum, geometry when when we have the students to warrant it. But similarly, the goal is try to get as many students as possible through algebra before the time they leave us, which means even if they're not, let's say, taking 8th grade math as a 7th grader, utilizing some of the program DCPS offers on a system level, like the summer algebra readiness course, to try to get as many of our students into that and ready to take algebra and really thrive in algebra as an 8th grader, so that they're going into high school with a leg up. So definitely similar to Stuart Hobson in that sense. Our sort of enrichment or intervention classes, so these are on top of the core content classes that students take on a daily basis. All students are taking, health and PE, something involving the arts, and then there's also an opportunity for intervention. So we offer several levels of intervention in reading for students who need extra support to reach grade level, but on the other end, we also offer more advanced options. So for example, we're offering an advanced writing intervention course for students who are already on or above grade level. So it's not just the core content classes where you're getting that extra push. We're really looking for how many different times during the school day can we make sure you're in a space where we're really pushing you. So in addition to sort of the math placement options I mentioned, another enrichment class we offer is Project Lead the Way, which is a STEM design and engineering course, where if our students have proficiency or have a strong interest in STEM, we place them in that course to help to further foster those interests and passions. In terms of how we place students, it's all very, very data driven. So we're lucky in DCPS that we get a lot of data on our students well before they even hit our doors. So we try to make a lot of placement decisions based on data, but also in collaboration with our families well before our students hit our doors. So in addition to some of the things I mentioned, one of our feeder schools is Tyler Elementary, which has a dual language program. So we take the responsibility seriously to offer an opportunity for those students coming from the dual language program at Tyler to be able to continue that work in Spanish at Jefferson. So, we're looking at, as soon as they enroll, what program are you in at your current feeder school? What is your data looking like? What can we learn about your interests and what coursework is going to help to, maximize your experience in middle school from day one? And similar to what Principal Fraser shared, it's data, but it's also collaboration with families, listening when families reach out. Like it is very normal for parents to reach out and say, hey, what kind of advanced options are available to my student? I think they could use an extra push. And we're always open to having those conversations, right? Like, as Eric said, like I'd rather have a student try something out that might be a little too challenging and us figure it out that way than do the opposite. So I think we're all really open to figuring out what's going to be the absolute best for every individual student and trying to maximize their growth during the relatively short time we have with them.
Thank you, Principal Doman. Principal Educham, I want to ask you the same question, and you might have seen in the chat that folks are also asking, what does Montessori look like for middle school years? So maybe you can tackle both.
Sure. And so because we have the blessing of serving 11 grade levels, when it comes to offering enrichment and different opportunities for students that are not just on, but an above grade level, we really have to take a collaborative approach. Because of staffing, we have to pretty much make it available for everyone, right? So in the way that teachers are trained in Montessori is that we expose children to all types of topics. So for example, our 8th graders, all of them are being exposed to linear equations, examples of functions in geometry, and other types of linear functions. And then they also, as they're rising 7th graders, they participate in, families have the ability to go to the summer algebra program that Doman alluded to. But Montessori teachers are trained to be able to bring the rigorous expectations no matter who is in front of them. So whether you're dealing with a student who is approaching grade level or one that is above grade level, the expectation is that the student task, what they're expected to do, will be modified, and they will be given additional opportunities to do independent study, independent research on topics that interest them, even in a math domain, in ELA. And so other opportunities, our teachers are really, really good. For example, for science, because DCPS did not have a science fair, we still had kids do science fair project, and they entered their projects into the Montgomery County science fair. And so they're still able to, they gain entry into the Montgomery County Public School Science Fair, and they'll be participating with students there. And so we look for different ways, getting them involved in debate club through the various debate societies, getting them in to participate in different ways for them to engage mathematically, like a chess club. And so because we are a small middle school serving so many grade levels, we depend heavily on partnerships with like the American Chemical Society to provide kids with opportunities to go deeper on topics with the experts. And teachers also are really driven to provide real-time instruction that will push kids to wherever they need to go. And we have specialists in the building. We have a math specialist, we have a reading specialist, and a Montessori specialist. And all of these people make themselves available before school and after school for kids who want to extend what it is that they're doing really, really well, as well as to get support and what they need extra help in. And how the Montessori works in the middle school, it's very much similar to a project-based learning approach, where students are able to do independent study, work in groups. They engage in a lot of Socratic seminars. So they're used to engaging and discussing and asking questions, discussing what's going on in the news, because we know what children know through discourse, right? And then after discourse, there's always some type of writing opportunity for us to really understand. So we understand through discourse, but we also understand through the written product. And we give children the opportunity in all the way up through the middle school to struggle through that rough draft and the revision. And for that process to, for them to really understand that it's a lot of times it's the process, not necessarily the product, right? Eventually you're gonna get to a nice product, but children tend to drop off if the process is not smooth. And what we do in Montessori is for kids to understand that it's not a straight path, it's not linear. And we will work with you, we'll student conference with you, we'll make work plans with you, we'll set quick win goals, and we'll set long-term goals. And I think with that, it really prepares the student towards independence, because as they get to high school, it's no more really, I'm teaching you to learn. You are basically reading and gathering information to teach yourself, and then going to the teacher for additional support. So what's really unique about our space, yes, we are small, but I think it's really giving our kids an opportunity to really own their learning, to make mistakes, to understand it's a process. But as far as access to rigorous instruction, algebra, and those different core classes, while we may not have the manpower to have a separate section for here, separate section here, we're very intentional about still offering those opportunities within the DCPS curriculum while using the practices and the principles of Montessori.
So much for that wonderful explanation. I learned a lot from that. Let's switch. We heard a lot about what is clearly an emphasis on rigor and access to advanced coursework in our Ward 6 middle school. Principal Doman, could you tell us one unique thing about Jefferson Academy and their extracurricular? And I'd love to hear that from all the principals. Principal Frazier, I'm going to come to you next.
Sure. Unique. So first, I would say we have a really, really robust extracurricular clubs, athletics programs. We have every athletic program under the sun. And clubs, we have one unique thing is we have a longstanding partnership with Arena Stage, which obviously is a block away from us, and a phenomenal program, Voices of Now, where students who are interested in the performing arts have the opportunity to go over to Arena Stage 3 days a week and work with professional actors and directors. And they actually write and create their own original production throughout the course of the school year, which is then put on in this big festival in May each year. So that's a longstanding, really special relationship that we have. We also have, 15 other after-school clubs, programs, some of which are outside partners that come in and work with us. Some of them are after-school clubs that teachers just started based on their own interests. So a lot of our kids were interested in anime. So one of our teachers said, we need an anime. Not that the teacher herself wasn't even interested in anime. She was just like, the kids need this. So I'm going to create it and we'll enjoy it together and I'll learn it. We had a teacher start a Korean club, craft club, music club, student government. These are all just staff members who wanted to offer new and different opportunities to students after school. In terms of other programs that are through external partners, we have a longstanding after-school partner, Kid Power, that comes in 4 days a week and does programming with students during our completely free after-school program that's available to all families. I work with Teens Run DC and Nationals Baseball Academy, and George Washington University comes in and does a girls mentoring group. We have 3 or 4 different mentoring groups after school for students. We have a phenomenal partner, The House, which does a leadership development program with students after school. The curriculum was actually adapted from the University of Virginia Darden School of Business. So there are just, on any given week at Jefferson, there are probably 15 to 20 different programs happening after school across athletics and non-athletics, and all open to all students at all grade levels. And there's really no excuse not to find something that piques your interest. And we're always looking to add new things as well. So I think the Voice of Now thing was one unique partnership, and I think our proximity to Arena Stage allowed for that. But I'm really proud of just the variety we have.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Principal Frazier.
So similarly, we just have a wide variety. This is a very important part of middle school, we think. It's an important part of youth development, and we want to make sure that we put out as many opportunities as we can for the students. Similarly, when there is student interest in something, and the kids usually come to me first to ask why, if we can have anime or podcasting or something, we say, if enough of you band together, you will be able to convince somebody to facilitate this. So a lot of our clubs in recent years have been student generated, and then they kind of back a teacher or another staff member into supervising it for them. So I think our podcasting, student paper, we have like a school library advisory council, kids who are working in the library a couple days a week. Those are all because of student interest. then I think in addition to the athletics, where we tend to be pretty competitive with the other schools on this call through DCIA sports and keep some rivalries alive, I think the things that are really unique for us that are like very popular, one is the Stuart Hobson Middle School Drama Players, which is our musical theater program. It's been really heartbreaking to watch them struggle to wait to get back on the stage during the pandemic. We're excited that they have something in the works for the spring, so it'll be our first musical that hasn't been virtual since the pandemic began. Generally speaking, our theater program tries to be as inclusive as possible, meaning that Ms. Ferguson seeks out plays and performances that are have like multiple parts and multiple scenes, so that as many students who want to get involved, if you've been in the cluster or in our feeder pattern, you know that often the pre-K students or kindergarten or first graders from some of our feeder schools are invited to play small parts in those shows. So we do try to make those community events. Students who participate in that often do go on to continue studying theater in high school. So a lot of like tickets to Duke because of that. And then I think the other one that is relatively new, but hit like made a big splash in the pool was debate. So our debate team just went wild last year. We had one of the biggest teams in the country. They won the national championship. They're back in the national competition this year. It's open to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Students join, they come and go all year. But I think we had upwards of 40 students participating at the end of last school year. And that's just a great like academic connection in debate for social studies and English. So I think debate and the musical theater program are our two unique ones and two of the most popular.
Thank you. Principal Macrina, what is unique at Eliont-Hine?
I think we have a lot that's similar in terms of students driving. We had a cat club one year because, cats. So anything's possible. Our library is a very, very active place. So they just started Battle of the Books. So that's going on now, but we also have book clubs after school. They're about to start their 4th book of the year. They do a different genre every time. The kids vote on the book, and there's one for 7th and 8th grade and one for 6th grade. There are also like board game activities after school in there, and that was actually started by a student. So it's a very active place. Also during lunch and recess. We do have some classes that I feel like fit into, Greg reminded me when he said Project Lead the Way, like we have medical detectives, we have green architecture, we have automation and robotics, flight and space, app creators. So those are things that I think are super cool for kids to experience that they don't necessarily normally get to in a middle school. Probably one of the things and I would say when I came here 4 years ago, the year before I came, there were 0 competitive sports. And as of right now, we have 18 teams and did really well this year and had our first home games in our new facilities. It is a joy to be out at the soccer field or in the gym. So I'm really excited about that. We have archery, bowling, and swimming are probably 3 of the most unique sports activities that we have. And then the most unique is probably the Eliont-Hine Network. So we're the only middle school with a video production program that's actually through the career and technical education through DCPS. So we get quite a bit of funding that way. We have a full studio, like a state-of-the-art studio. It was just built where it has like the panel room where the kids do all of the video production stuff, I guess. And then there's a place where they do the interviewing. So you can find a lot of that online. We just had kids today down interviewing at Ben's Chili Bowl and Lee's Flowers down here. I'm pointing because I live on the block, so it's like right there. So they just get lots of opportunities. They've interviewed Magic Johnson. They interviewed Lawrence Fishburne. They just interviewed lots of people, and it's really exciting to see them do that. And a lot of kids say they had so much and parents have said this too, like their kids didn't speak up. And then once they do this, it really helps them be more comfortable as public speakers. So that's just an added benefit. But the Eliont-Hine Network is a lot of kids like that. And they get that. Video production is also a class that they can have in 7th and 8th grade. And they're exposed to it through their computer class in 6th grade.
Shout out to Eliont-Hine Network. Follow them on Twitter, which I do. I think it's super. Principal Adjutant.
We were very fortunate prior to the COVID lockdown to offer in excess of 20 different clubs after school for kids that we rotated every 9 weeks. and they opted in. We had chess, we had chess, we had gymnastics, we had music, we had choir, we had finally started up our co-ed basketball team. We had a myriad of program offerings, but one of the most unique things to us is that we have a really strong parent who is all about play production, but really into having the kids design from beginning to end. They'll modify scripts, they'll build sets, they'll work on lighting, they'll do choreography. And we were in the middle of a production when COVID shut us down. But last year, the kids actually met over Zoom after school and acted their various parts. And by the end of the year, they were able to piece together all of their parts into one production. And we met on the lawn at Meyer, because that's where we were, while we were swing spacing. And we were able to watch an actual production that took place literally behind the screen in children's homes. So we're really excited when we get the opportunity to bring back theater production back at our school. But I think something else that's unique that I didn't highlight before is that our kids now have access to both Spanish and Mandarin. And that is something that the teachers are really eager to extend to the after school programming. We brought back our newspaper this year, Sandra. The newspaper is back. And so the kids are writing articles from beginning to end. They're designing it online, and then it actually goes to a printing press. And there's a physical newspaper that gets handed out to families. And we're bringing back our sports teams, track and field mostly. So we're slowly thawing out and bringing back a lot of the programming that our families are used to seeing, but we are strong with theater and with music. This year, we have 4 different offerings after school. We have orchestra. Kids can get individualized lessons on guitar, on percussion instruments, on stringed instruments. And it is them choosing to come and take that. And the music teacher makes herself available 4 days a week to offer these lessons. So right now it's really exciting because now we finally have instruments at Capitol Hill Montessori.
So glad that schools are beginning to reinstitute all the wonderful things they were doing before the pandemic. So that's really exciting. Let's turn to another area that I think a lot of parents on Zoom are interested in. 2 years or a year and a half is a long time to be away from a classroom and interacting with your peers and interacting with teachers when a lot of our students were at home doing learning, via computer. Those developmental issues show up in a variety of behavioral ways. I would love for all of you, and if we could start with Principal Fraser, just to speak to how, what your theory is as the leader in the building, both in creating a really healthy school climate, which includes everything to how you prevent bullying, how do you make sure kids are safe going and coming to school. A lot, me as a parent of a 6th and a 4th grader, that's been top of mind for me. So if all of you can share really your leadership style and how you are trying to make that work in schools today.
Thank you for letting me lead with this question. I mean, this is a tough one, right? I think if any of us had the silver bullet answer to it, I think schools would have been great across the country this year. But that has been a challenge. And I think that's what we were all trying to figure out last year when we were planning for this return, was like, where did we need to invest our resources and prepare our resources to meet whatever that unknown thing that was coming to us. I think what we have focused on at Stuart, and I think this is just a general leadership theory for me, is it's really important to gather data and gather feedback from our stakeholders so that we know where programs that we put in place, people that we put in place are being helpful or are not, so that we can realign things and shift. And I think having things like our LSAT, having our reopening, or what was it called, the RCC, being with students in person early in the school years, to interact with them and talk to them and observe what they were doing and struggling with or succeeding with. All those little bits and pieces of feedback were critical for us for just gauging the effectiveness of some of the plans that we put in place. Like, for instance, we had a study block at the end of the school day for the first half of the school year that we had hoped would be a place where kids could build community, catch up on work, practice some social emotional learning skills like self-awareness, self-management, and some of those executive functioning skills. We added personnel to our budget. So we added a full-time guidance counselor. Like Principal Agrino, we have quite a few social workers through our budget, but also through partner organizations. And we knew that they were going to be incredibly important. We added behavior techs. So we just wanted people who were going to be present for the kids, and it speaks to our value about being well known. And a lot of our work in the early part of the school year was naming for students and naming for families what our expectations were for culture, practicing those expectations, but also building relationships with those people who could help them if they were struggling with an interpersonal conflict or had questions about a routine during the school day. So I think that it has been adaptive work for us this year, and it probably has been true for a lot of schools. I think that as a school community, anticipating the need for additional social workers and people who are just going to like help students with social skills and social needs was a wise choice. I think what surprised our school community in particular was we could have doubled or tripled the investment there had we had the resources, and probably still felt like we were filled to the gills with need. But I will say, I think we've been talking in our school about like how it felt like after the first vacation this year, like we were turning a corner. And I think that corner that we turned was we had gotten back to a place where most of our students knew staff in the school. And what I reminded our staff early was 2/3 of our students had not been in our school building. We started the school year with only relationships and familiarity with maybe 1/3 of the young people. And at a time like this, that's so critical for them to have social relationships that are stable and predictable and safe. That was an incredibly tall task to take on while we were trying to make sure we were social distancing and wearing masks and going to math class and doing our homework and all the other things that we need to do in middle school. So I think that just that theory of like making sure that we're gathering feedback and working with all of the stakeholders in our school to make decisions and being open to making changes mid-course like that, that's how we have been, I guess, muddying our way through this school year.
Principal Magrino, what about you at Eliont-Hine?
So this is how we prepared for coming back from online. Is that the exact question?
Also, we all know that coming back, as Eric just mentioned, like the 7th graders showed up. Last time they were in school was the second half of 5th grade or the first half of 5th grade. It's a big developmental swing. So, what is your leadership theory to adjust for that, adjust for the behavioral unknowns, as well as in school climate and out of school climate, making sure your kiddos are safe?
Yes. Got it. I thought I'd heard leadership theory and then I was trying to put it together. I'm sorry about that. So yeah, I mean, this is my 8th year as a principal and 11th year as a school administrator. And by far, by like miles, this has been the most challenging year, like by miles. And for me, I had a lot of, I thought I knew what my leadership theory was coming in, which was a whole lot of, systems and structures and building relationships, all those things. What I realized very quickly is number one had to be taking care of our staff. And making sure that I, in whatever way, was listening to staff and adjusting so that we were taking care of the people who needed to be able to sustain for the students and keep high quality instruction going on and have the energy for all the extra things that we do and coming to the games and calling the parents. And so part of it really shifted. I was like, okay, what do we do to make sure that all the adults in this building are whole and healthy? Which I think in turn then provides obviously the right environment for the students. On the student level, I referenced this earlier that I think it needs to be students, I want them to feel safe, emotionally safe physically, and I want them to have trusted adults. We have a small group advisory every morning. So it's approximately like 12 to 14 students with 1 to 2 adults. That's the primary contact for families. We do lessons together. We do goal setting and progress monitoring on Aspen and Panorama, like the tools that we have. I don't know if those are in elementary schools as well. And the students set goals, and they set behavioral goals. We have a community meeting on Friday that right now is virtual. So we all like tune in on the smart boards and kids present. So that sense of community, which I agree it was just really challenging to build, I think is really important. So for me, like I'm seeing kids, you know, 8th graders, gosh, they were trying to flirt and boy, they did not know how, right? Like that was a social skill that had been lost. And so that was causing problems. Like they don't know how to like, I'm dating this person and then that person. And so now it's a big fight. We have kids who are trying to negotiate with each other and say, did you have a problem with me? No, did you have a problem with me? And they don't know how to like work through that. So it was just some of these, you know, things that you work out and learn from 6th grade through 8th grade that hadn't been. And I don't think there was any way of us understanding how much that impacts the environment. So we've just tried this. We said, that's what we need to address first. Let's make lots of opportunities. Now we have a space where kids can do a self-referral for mediation and slide it under a door. And then we set it up with them. And we've just tried to flood with opportunities for, let's just take the time to sit down and work through this. I'm loud and proud about asking for any and all support. I'm very transparent about challenges. And so I've gotten a lot of additional supports from central office and from partners. And we just started another couple partnerships with credible messengers for some of our students who are struggling the most. So I think my leadership theory is look at what's going on, listen to what's going on, and then like adjust to it. So it was a year full of flexibility, but really focusing on taking care of staff, having those small group advisories so that we were building relationships with kids, but also with the families through that structure. And then just making opportunities for kids to grow in a safe space and mess up and just for it to be messy because it's middle school. Middle school's messy. So.
Principal Adijam, how about you at Capitol Hill Montessori?
Yeah, so I realized that we had to really dig deep with our staff first, right? Because our staff are frontline workers, they're the first responders. And so if we did not provide the necessary professional development around social emotional learning, depending heavily on the resources from Turnaround for Children. I depended heavily on that website this year because a lot of it is really based on recovery. Turnaround for Children really came out as a result of 9/11. And that particular physician wanted to be able to treat the children who were exposed to long-term trauma because of that. And then it turned into this great body of work with lots of resources for educators to first be able to be aware of their own trauma. Because we wanted as much as possible to have the adults be whole when trying to deal with kids who are coming in with unexpected trauma. Like we don't really know the depth of what students have experienced. So we try to front load as much of what we already know with what the research says, really digging in deep with looking at our own emotional intelligence or lack thereof, so that we know where our blind spots are. We know where we come with implicit bias, because all of that shows up in the way that we deal with children who are experiencing trauma. We also did a heavy investment into big life journals. And what it is, we needed to have a tier 1 approach where everyone had access to journals that they can hold in their hand that deals with growth mindset, that deals with how to deal and recognize and work through a setback. Because we recognize that a lot of kids were not ready to fully thaw out and tell you about what they've experienced. So these big life journal, each child had one in hand, and each day has a mini story and a mini social emotional learning, all brain-based activities and prompts and writing prompts for them to begin to reflect. And then if they want to share with a counselor, with the social worker, with the school psychologist, there's a springboard, and it's not fully disclosing to you everything that's happening to me, but it's an opportunity for them to heal through their writing. Because a lot of times you will not get to the kids who really need the help because they're internal processors. And then it turns up later where you see their academics are not where you think they should be, or they're withdrawn, or they begin to externalize through behaviors what's going on the inside. And prior to like say like the panorama survey and all those things, Turnaround for Children also has a student wellness index, and it's a very friendly quick check where kids, you can ask, are you sleeping? How motivated do you feel at school? Do you feel loved at school? Just those basic questions, and they score themselves, and then they turn it in, and then I can look and see, okay, this person has mostly ones in all of these areas. So you can really see who needs immediate intervention versus ones who are kind of in the middle and toward the 5. And I know I'm kind of sounding like I'm rambling, but anyway, we do look at data pieces, but very low key data that kids self-report. Making community meetings standard every single day, giving them time to focus on a topic that will help uncover some things that they may not want to talk about. And then just being teachers being very aware of themselves and their limitations in dealing with children. And they know that it's okay to come to me and say, I'm having a difficult time with this particular child. I think they're going to need this because this is beyond my ability, because their teachers are also coming out of a pandemic. They're also dealing with their own family traumas, their own family loss. And so if we're here saying, okay, we're going to focus on the children without focusing on the adults that are in front of the children, then it's a missed opportunity. Because in order for us to develop whole children, we have to help in the development of the whole adults. So that was the initial approach.
Thank you, Principal Aducham. Principal Doman, I'm sure a lot of these things resonate with you, but anything special that you all focused on at Jefferson?
Sure. So, echo everything my colleagues said. There was very much unknown about going into this school year. The one thing that we knew was that despite how difficult the previous year and a half had been with pivoting to virtual and then all of that, we knew the biggest challenge was going to be this school year and coming back and dealing with all the unknowns that came with that, right? And it's absolutely delivered, as Marlene said. So on the front end, I think what we did, which is what a lot of schools did, is how can we intentionally put as many resources and support as possible into mental health support, social emotional learning, et cetera. So we added an additional social worker, which brought us to 3 in addition to 2 full-time therapists through partner organizations, school counselor, school psychologist, behavior techs, as many social emotional staff as possible. Though if you work in a middle school, you're kind of a low-key social worker no matter what your official role is. So it's kind of incumbent on everyone. I think we also wanted a very intentional approach as it related to social emotional learning. So we adopted the zones of regulation, which is a social emotional framework and pathway of learning that really gives students a resource and a language to use when talking about their own emotional regulation, right? You're in the blue, yellow, green, or red zone, and that it really speaks to your current state. And then we have aligned strategies for how you can sort of work through whatever mental health space you're in that day. And we use it as adults too. So if you're feeling particularly anxious or stressed, you might be in the yellow. If you're a little low energy, tired, you're in the blue. The goal is to be in the green, which is this learning focused, energized, really motivated place. So this is language and visuals we use with our students every day. It's been a big success. We were also super intentional to start the year that, like, when we saw dysregulated behaviors, our immediate approach should be to teach versus to punish, right? Like, because as you've alluded to, students were out of school. They went from being a fourth grader to a sixth grader overnight, right? And a lot of these behaviors, right, like we actually need to teach the appropriate regulated behavior. So a lot of our approach, especially over the first few months before we got, Eric referenced sort of that like turning point when you're like, all right, now we're back to the school culture that I know and love, or at least getting back to it. A lot of those first few months, we're working through it and doing a lot of teaching just about how to be in a school environment and interact appropriately with your peers. We got to it, I would say, in like November, December, where it was like, all right, the dust is settling. We're feeling like we're back to ourselves. But I want to go back to something Marlene said, which is the mess. Middle school is messy, right? It is a beautiful, emotional, unique mess that I would never want to be away from. It is a really difficult time in kids' lives, and even in the best of circumstances, it's messy, it's ugly at times. But right, like I thrive in the mess, right? Like I love to be with our kids. I love to be at lunch or recess. I love to be around them. We had indoor recess today. It was raining. I got hit in the face with a soccer ball, right? Highlight of my day, easily, right? Like I love those moments. And I reference that because the most important thing that we've done this year is to be with our kids and to listen to what our kids are telling us. And some of the things they tell us explicitly through our advisory program, our small groups of 12 students who start the day together each and every day. We do a lot of informal conversations, restorative circles, surveys through that to really make sure student voice is elevated, is leading all the things that we do. We do student focus groups. So yesterday we did a student focus group with students who asked to go to the bathroom in every single class. And we pulled them all together and we were like, guys, like, why, right? Like we know you don't have like a documented need for that. So like, what is it that you need like a break from class every day, right? And we're looking for the root cause, right? We're not just saying, we're not slapping them on the wrist. We're listening to them. We want to figure out what is going to make you not want a break from every single class that you go to. So it's really listening to what they're saying explicitly, but also what are their behaviors telling us, right? Let's dig beneath the surface. If we're seeing this negative behavior play out, what's actually behind it? What do we need to focus on in terms of our social emotional curriculum and lessons, a skill that maybe they haven't developed? So I think the biggest thing for me is like leaning into the mess of middle school. Even in the best of times, middle school is a messy time. But you need a school and you need a staff who's ready to be there with the kids in that mess and suffer through it with them and listen to them. And I think that's where we found the most success this year.
You, Principal Doman. While I have you, what is your total student population at Jefferson?
We're at about 375 or so right now.
Great, thank you. I have one question I want to make sure that we get to Principal Aduchim, and then a question about an off-asked question. For Principal Aduchim, are there anything parents should know about students accessing your middle school who were not in Montessori in the early years?
Since we are all lottery system, like all students can basically apply and are randomized according to the lottery system. We have 2 feeder schools, and that is JC Knoll. So the kids that come out of the Montessori program there are automatically accepted. It's also Langdon. But I think the biggest thing for non-Montessori students is for the students to come in and be ready for some independence. That no one is leading you by the hand to get work done. You know, it's presented to you, you're supported, you're expected to get it done. You are being prepared to be an independent learner as you're getting older. Now, with that freedom comes responsibility. So that's the whole Montessori mantra, freedom with responsibility. And so for a lot of our students that come in, they are really surprised at the level of independence that they're given as far as being able to do some independent study, going to the library, being out in the hallway working on different projects. But the expectations of the rigor of the Common Core state standards and the DCPS curriculum is still there, but we give kids different opportunities to express their learning. So if the performance task requires a writing prompt, if the student says, I would rather do a video presentation, or I would rather do a poster, or I would rather do a PowerPoint. The difference with Montessori is that they're given the chance to demonstrate the content that they've learned in a way that makes sense to them and that makes their learning meaningful. But we travel in cohorts, just like the regular middle schools. Our upper elementary used to be 4th, 5th, and 6th. But based on lots of parent feedback, they were concerned, will our kids be able to handle the rigors of an application high school? We want to make sure that they're being exposed to all of the core content areas because everything is done in one classroom, essentially multi-aged. So we pulled the 6th grade out to join the middle school. So 6th grade is a cohort, 7th grade is a cohort, 8th grade is a cohort. The difference is that we offer a bit more freedom with responsibility around organizing yourself, getting your work done, and taking ownership for your learning. That's the major difference.
Thank you for that wonderful answer. I have one final question that I'm sure will take us to the 9 o'clock hour. And before I do that, I just want to thank Sandra and Suzanne and all of our neighborhood parents and partners who help share the word, and of course our amazing principals on Ward 6. I personally learned so much, and still since I have a 4th grader who will be attending school in a bit, I'm just really thrilled to hear about all the wonderful things that are happening. Final question. This is your time where you can make your pitch. In a system where there are many choices for our young people to attend different schools, what do you want to tell your parents about why your school is the good option for them? We're going to start with Principal Magrino.
Thank you. Well, I think first and foremost, I would say, I think parents need to decide with their children, or really them, but maybe considering their child, which school's best for them. Because I think it's every experience is different. I respect all my colleagues very much, and I know they have great programs. I've been in their schools. In terms of why I think Eliont-Hine is a great choice, is really because I think we try to provide, we have so many opportunities for students to try a lot of different things. We're small enough that kids can get involved in multiple sports and the Eliont-Hine Network and be in book club and do all of those things and be able to balance them all so they can get a lot of experience in that. We're constantly growing. So when I came on board 4 years ago, I think we had 213 students. We're now at 340. We're in a brand new building. So we've had incredible transformation over the last 4 years. So I think that momentum is going to continue. We're getting more and more families really engaged and involved. We're capturing more of our feeder school students. We're retaining teachers and staff much longer. And so all of that leads to, a really solid culture in the building that we can just deeply develop as we continue to go. So I just feel really good about where we are right now in terms of how much we've grown while a pandemic was going on, which is pretty impressive to begin with, but also super excited about where we're headed. So you'll hear about us and you'll see us on the Eliont-Hine Network if you don't join us. But either way, come see the building and come see our students do amazing things because it's really a joy to be over at our school with everything going on.
Fraser?
Just want to say thank you to Denise for facilitating tonight, if this is one of the last chances I get to open my mouth. And also thank you to Sandra and Suzanne for having us and being patient with us while you tried to pin down 4 principals, which is harder than herding cats, I think. So thank you guys for having us tonight. I just want to make a plug for these 4 schools in particular. I think when you choose any of the 4 of these schools on and around the Hill, you are choosing to continue with a community of families and students that you probably know from your elementary school. So I think there's something that for me personally is a very like symbolic and important gesture that families make when they choose DCPS middle schools, is like you're choosing to continue that community. And I promise you it is something that I know we deliver on, and these other 3 schools do as well. I didn't mention it when I talked about recovering from the pandemic, but it has been incredibly helpful for us to have families that know each other as they came in with us. And if you go to some of the more choice-driven schools, you are not going to have that continuity of community. So I just, really hope everybody who's with us tonight, whether you end up with us, I hope that you choose one of these 4 schools, because it's going to feel much more familiar for your student and for you as a family in the neighborhood. As for us in particular, I think the thing we try to leave people with, we talked about, our arts programming and athletics and our pursuit of academic excellence. The way we boil that down in our open house is, and a student gave us this phrase, Stuart Hobson Middle School is a school where you will learn a lot and you will also have a lot of fun. And we put equal pressure on ourselves to deliver on both of those promises. So if you're going to choose us among these 4 great options, hopefully that is something that you are interested in getting out of the middle school experience.
Oops. Thank you, Principal Frazier. Principal Doman.
Yes. First, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been really fun and just a great chance to share about 4 really awesome schools. And to echo what Principal Frazier said, you can't go wrong with any of these 4 schools. They all have incredibly strong leaders, great facilities, lots of beautifully modernized buildings, and really, really strong programming. So I encourage you to get to know more about all of them, but you can't go wrong with any of them. And I've been at Jefferson for 10 years, and I've had a lot of conversations with families, and there's nothing I enjoy more than persuading a family not to go the competitive charter route and to come on home to your neighborhood DCPS middle school, because you will not regret it. I promise you. I promise you, I've not stayed at a school for 10 years that I don't think is the absolute best middle school option for every family within a stone's throw, or honestly, any school around DC or any neighborhood around DC. And I would say the same about my 3 colleague schools. So, in terms of Jefferson, I would say we have 2 big goals of the school. We call them our BHAGs, our big, hairy, audacious goals. They are that we want to be the best middle school in DC for all students. So again, back to that competitive nature that we have, but we want to make sure that we are the best middle school option for every individual student, all of our 375 students, which means that their particular coursework, the supports that we put in place, the extensions and enrichments are all designed to meet their individual needs. And we're always checking back up on that. We're always getting input from the student, their family. Are your needs being met? Are there opportunities for us to push, challenge, support you even more? And we remain, fixated on that goal during your students' 3 years at Jefferson. We never want them to feel like they're not supported. We never want them to feel that they're bored or unchallenged sitting in a classroom. The second of our BHAGs is that we want all members of the Jefferson community to love school. Middle school can be a very challenging time, as we all talked about tonight. And oftentimes, if a student becomes disillusioned with school and education during these 3 years, they never come back from it. So developing that true love for school and everything that comes along with it is something that we view as equally as important as the first goal. So how do we make sure that students have a sense of community, that they have people that they love and trust and care about and feel like care about them in our school community, and understanding that that's going to look lots of different ways for our students. Some of our students get it through their advisory teacher and that little small school family that they have during their 3 years. A lot of our students get it with our amazing librarian, Ms. Boyd, who has created such a sanctuary in our beautiful library before school, during lunch and recess, after school. We have a large contingent of students who find solace and community spending time there and engaging with books or other activities, in clubs and athletics and all sorts of different opportunities where students find their sense of belonging within our school community. That we want to make sure every single student feels that. And then we have a beautifully modernized building. Modernization was just completed in August of 2020. If you haven't been able to tour the building, it is absolutely beautiful. And the last thing I would say is, we have great location. We're right across the street from the wharf. So Friday afternoon, you pick your student up, send them on a little walk, hit up happy hour at the many different great options at the wharf. You couldn't ask for more.
Thank you, Principal Doman. And last but not least, Principal Aduchum.
My goodness, how can you compete with the waterfront? But guess what? We have outdoor gardens everywhere. We may not have water, but our middle schoolers have access to outdoor classrooms. They can eat outside whenever the weather is nice, pretty decent. And, I can't tell you how grateful I am for parents like Sandra, who really fought hard for our modernization. Not only do we have a beautiful learning space, it is a space where children come and forget that they're in school. It's a place where teachers come and look up at 7 o'clock, oh my goodness, it's time to go home. And we feel so very lucky to have a learning environment that we enter in that we can literally be all in. We really focus on developing the whole child, the social, emotional, academic, and non-spiritual aspects of what it means to be a human. And by the time I get my hands on your child, they become mine for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, if that's their entry point. And I get to know, because we're a smaller school, I get to know every single child very intimately. And so I can have a direct hand in their day-to-day operations. They're coming and they're going. And so if you're looking for a middle school, depending on your child, if a smaller school setting would be better for them to thrive in, then Capitol Hill Montessori is definitely where you want to send your child. And if you are comfortable with your child being an explorer, being an independent learner, really getting themselves ready, building up their agency, their sense of autonomy to be really successful once they move on. And something else that we are very, very proud of, like any school that your student wants to go to and they put their heart to it, we have a school counselor that is amazing that will get your child ready to get accepted into any school of their choice. We try to, direct them to apply for DC public schools, but literally our children come in and we prepare them and they're competitive at whichever high school they choose to go to.
Jester agrees. I just want to thank everybody again. Suzanne, do you want to close us out? I took notes because everybody said such amazing things, but I don't want to keep folks longer. They've really stayed the journey with us.
I will be very brief. Denise, you did a wonderful job this evening, and I want to thank you so much. And I think what came through for me tonight is that we have 4 principals that care so much about their students and their families. And leadership is so important at schools. And I think our community is so blessed to have all 4 of you heading up our by right neighborhood schools. So I really appreciate everyone who joined us this evening. And I hope when you get to the point where you are looking for a middle school that you will give very serious thought to the schools here in our community. So thank you all for this evening.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
That was really fair. Southwest is pretty hard to beat.
Amen. Southwest. Have a good one.
That was unfair. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for texting me always, Suzanne.